Okay, everybody, for today, I will be discussing how you can structure and compose your essays for the GRE AWA tasks. For those of you who are still in early stages of your prep, that's perfectly fine. I will be giving an introduction, a very brief introduction to the GRE, as well as what I mean by the AWA section before I go into this particular topic. Okay, so without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. Let's talk about the GRE's analytical writing section, or for short, AWA. Okay, so for those of you who are still unfamiliar with the GRE's exam pattern, or if you're still not really into your test prep very far, the GRE is made up of three different types of sections. The two popular ones that everybody tends to know about right away are the verbal and the quant sections. But apart from these, you also have something that is called the analytical writing measure. Now, the analytical writing measure is actually a 1-hour section placed at the very beginning of your GRE exam, and it involves writing that is composing 2 different essays within that hour. So you have half an hour to compose one essay and another half hour to compose the other essay. And that section is what I'm going to talk about now. Now, a lot of you may think that the AWA section is not really the most important one, or because it doesn't have the same weightage as verbal and quant in your GRE score, but that is not true. In fact, the AWA score that you get for your GRE can actually really be a great boost to your profile. Getting a really good score here, anywhere from 4 to 6, I will talk a little bit more about the scoring in just a bit, can boost your profile in the sense it tells all of the colleges to which you apply that you are capable of critical thinking, of exceptionally good writing, and logical reasoning. So much like the verbal reasoning section, this also tests your ability to think and analyze texts, but more importantly, also your ability to express it in writing, in words, on your own. This is a very, very important skill, and the reason I'm stressing on that is because all of you who aspire to write the GRE or any exam that you plan to write to get abroad for your master's courses, you will be expected to write a lot of assignments, to write papers, to work on research, and to submit a lot of content throughout your academic career in the US. This is a very heavy part of their academics, and not just at the college level. This is something that is emphasized right from school. So for those of you who are still uncomfortable with that, you can think of the AWA section as something that prepares you to tackle all of this, to tackle the challenge that a higher education in a country like the US, where English is their first language, is going to bring for you. So with that said, with that mindset, I would like to approach the analytical writing section now and see how you can work on improving your critical thinking, analytical skills, as well as your writing skills. Okay, so as I mentioned, this section assesses your critical thinking and analytical writing skills. It's testing your ability to do these things. 1, to articulate and support complex ideas. So at the very least, you need to be able to speak, to express these ideas in clear language. You also need to be able to construct and evaluate arguments. Now, these are 2 different things. So when I say you need to be able to construct an argument, one of the 2 tasks that you have in your AWA section focuses on your ability to build an argument on your own to support a particular idea. The other task will provide an argument and ask you to analyze, evaluate the soundness of the logic of that argument. So you need to be able to do both, and it's testing to measure you on both levels. Of course, last but not the least, you need to be able to sustain a focused and coherent discussion. Now, this discussion is going to be in the form of an essay, yes, but these are not the kinds of essays you may be used to writing in school so far or in college. These are going to be heavily analytical in nature, and you need to be really focused. You need to have an idea of exactly what you're going to say. It's going to have to be structured, logical, and cohesive. So I'm going to talk about how you can structure your ideas so that this can be achieved. Now, it's important to note that just like the rest of the GRE, especially the verbal section, the analytical writing section will not try to test you on your knowledge of any particular content. So don't worry if you read an argument that's about deer in the Arctic. If you have no idea about deer, if you have no idea about the Arctic or the Antarctic, that is not a problem. These questions are designed for you to be able to tackle them irrespective of your knowledge of these fields. Okay, the idea here is your skill, your ability to analyze, not your subject knowledge. So that being said, those of you who do have subject knowledge, it's also a good idea to leave that out of your analyses, leave it out of your essays, simply because it's not 100% reliable. Your memory may not be the perfect way to judge whether you know something or you don't know something, or for all you know, it may not be 100% related to exactly what you're saying, or it could even be outdated information. Just so you avoid the risk of being incorrect, I would recommend leaving out too much of your. Okay, so we've just got a question from a student saying, what if we don't understand the question? For that, I would recommend practicing at least 2 or 3 different questions and running it by an instructor of some type, just to see if your analysis is sound. But it begins with reading carefully. Reading the sentences, really trying to get to the core of the sentence. And when I say that, I mean you may need to just analyze your subject and predicate and see what the sentence is arriving at. I will give an example of the question types, one question type today, and we'll see if that helps. The most important thing, however, would be to get some practice and get the help of a few instructors. So I could definitely say that at Galvanize, we take a lot of effort to give all of our students special attention for analytical writing, and even give them feedback on a couple of their essays, very detailed and deep feedback. So it's recommended that you approach somebody regarding this. All right, it looks like there may be some technical issues. Okay. Okay, looks like we're still on air. I hope everybody can hear me. So Shubham, you've asked us if you need to write anything related to your field. To answer that question, you do not need to write anything related to your field. In fact, the questions are going to be very generic, and they are going to be very the kind of questions that anybody can answer. Keep in mind that the GRE is actually an exam meant for people from all kinds of fields. This includes literature and history and engineering. It also includes people from biology. So anybody and everybody ought to be able to tackle this. So no, it won't be related to a field, and no, you don't need to write about your field in particular either. All right, so let's go a little bit into the criteria involved in evaluating the essays that that you're going to be writing your essays on. When they're assessing the quality of your writing, the testers, the ones who score your essays, will be taking into account these 4 skills. 1, the content of your essay. That is your ability to present a cogent, a persuasive, relevant essay, relevant ideas and arguments with sound reasoning and supporting examples. Okay, so when I say that, I mean that your reasoning is what's the most important thing here. Your logic has to be in place. Whenever you make a claim, you have to support it with an example. Don't just make an open statement saying, hey, no, I disagree with the claim. Technology is very bad for us. You can't stop right there. You have to elaborate on why you think technology is bad for you, why you feel that this is not efficient. And further, you need to support it with some logic, right? Examples are great because they do both at the same time. So please make sure that your content is in place, make your claims clearly, support everything with examples, and build on something that has a logical structure. I will talk about how to structure your essays shortly. We've also got a couple of questions on vocabulary. You don't have to use very complex words in these essays to get a decent score. I'll talk more about what a decent score is shortly, but the important thing when it comes to vocabulary is if you are underconfident about any particular word, don't use it. Okay, the standard is any person who is an expert on the language in which you have written the essay would be able to tell a mistake apart very easily. So even if you're a little underconfident, don't use it. They are not looking for high vocabulary or complex words. They're looking for logic, reasoning, and clarity in expression. So try to use the words that you know very well and try to express ideas in the clearest possible way. Sentences that are straightforward, it's okay. If you're not confident, that's fine. Just make sure you're clear and you're not conveying something that's incorrect or could be wrong. Okay. Moving on, the next most important thing is going to be organization. So like I said, not only do you need to have your reasoning and your examples in place, you need to organize your ideas in a good way, in a way that builds on your previous ideas well, in a way that naturally takes the reader from point A to point B to point C and to your conclusion. By the time they reach the end, they should be nodding their heads and saying, oh my God, yes, I completely agree, right? And in order to do that, you need to have a good structure in mind, okay? The next thing is language. Yes, you do have to be a little careful about your language because they are looking for some sense of fluency with language. Your word choice, your word usage, your sentence structures, these are things that you should get some confidence over before you attempt your GRE AWA essays. Because this is going to tell them how comfortable you are communicating clearly with the language that you're going to have to use for the next 2 or more years in their country. Okay, so that said, if you don't have a high vocabulary, it's okay. If you don't use a lot of complex sentence structures, it's also okay. You can still get a decent score on AWA if you're not too confident. But what I would, like I just said a few minutes ago, I don't recommend forcing yourself to do something more complex than what is within your skill set. So don't unnecessarily make your sentences long-winded or complex because you think they're expecting that. They're not expecting that. You should use something that you're confident about because, like I said, a mistake stands out very easily in written language. So focus on using what's comfortable and what really works for you. Grammar is also something they're going to look at a little closely. It's okay if you make a handful of errors in one essay, but the repeated errors of a particular type will really stand out. So if you have a subject-verb agreement problem in your first paragraph, but they don't see another one in the rest of the essay, it's not going to be a real issue. They're not going to mark you down for that. But if you have subject-verb agreement issues throughout your entire essay, that's going to show them that this is a serious grammatical issue in your language. So what I would recommend is get a little comfortable with some of the standards of written English. The best way to do this is to read a lot. Practice writing. Use online tools that point out mistakes in your writing. In fact, even if you have the latest version of Microsoft Word, it's going to underline and give you those suggestions for any grammatical or syntactic mistakes. So just get some practice writing full sentences and seeing where you go wrong frequently. You can also approach any English language expert if you have anybody in your family or even a teacher who's willing to help you out to improve your grammar. Just make sure that your grammar is up to the mark. It's okay if you make 1 or 2 mistakes. Like I said, you're not going to lose a whole point on your AWA section. You only have 6 points per essay just for grammar, but it is important. Now, I'm sure all of you are wondering by this point in time that of these 4, which are the most important? So the real important things that they're looking for here for you to focus on would be content and organization. Okay, so for those of you in your very early stages of prep, I would advise you to focus first and foremost on these 2. Without content, without organization, there's no use in your language and grammar being excellent. Because if the content is missing, they can't really give you a score for sounding good. They need to give you a score for saying the things that are necessary to make this essay substantial. So first focus on understanding the issue or the argument at hand, analyzing it, writing a clear essay, structuring it in a way that makes logical sense, and everything will come together. These are the heaviest and most important things for your AWA section. And I say this in general for any essay writing, really. Without content, without being organized and logical, you cannot do anything much with just good language or grammar. Okay, so please focus on these 2 areas first. As for preparing for content, this depends. This varies from essay to essay. It really depends on what the content of the particular topic given is, but I will also give you some tips on how you can do that shortly. Okay, so please work on your language and grammar if you're underconfident, but these two come first. You cannot score well without these two at all. Okay, so why is the AWA section present in the GRE? For those of you who got in a little late or may have missed the introduction, it's really important that when you tackle your next couple of years in the US handling your master's degree or your PhDs, that you be comfortable analyzing and analyzing really important issues, analyzing arguments, and expressing what your thoughts are in a clear fashion. So the good thing is you don't need to have content knowledge to be able to tackle any of these topics. Okay, there are going to be students from fine arts, there are students from humanities departments, students from social sciences. There are students from everywhere who are tackling the same questions you are. So you don't need content knowledge. In fact, they have also tested to make sure that test takers can understand the task and respond to it irrespective of their study field or their interests. Okay, so you can handle it. Also, the important thing about the task is that it's trying to gather complex thinking. It's trying to elicit complex thinking from your end. It's trying to see whether you're capable of writing persuasively. And these are areas that university faculty consider as important at the graduate level. They are expecting this from you when you enroll with their universities. And that is why I said a good GRE analytical writing score can really impress when it's on your profile. Okay? So the good thing is everybody's responses are going to be very different in nature, because the way each of us express and develop our ideas is always a little bit different. We have different examples, we have different perspectives. So this is something that's unique and personal just to you. This is a place where you can really let your skills shine. So working on this, try to improve your profile significantly. Okay? So the time allotted for analytical writing, and this is very, very important for a lot of you who aren't comfortable writing essays, please pay attention. You have two separately timed tasks here, which means you have 30 minutes for one and 30 minutes for the other, and you cannot share the time between the two. So once this 30 minutes is up, or even if you only use 15 minutes for one task, you cannot make use of the remaining time for the other task. Okay, this is the limit. There's no way you can carry it over. That being said, the GRE is the type of exam that you have to sit through for the entire 4 hours. You have been given this much time. Please do not waste any of the time you've been given. It's granted for an essay, but this also applies to your verbal and quant section. Use every minute wisely. They have calculated the amount that you would require, the amount of time you'd require for these tasks based on a lot of testing, based on a lot of research, based on a lot of average attempts. And they have determined that this is the amount of time it requires for an average student to be able to churn out a good response. So take your time. Don't rush. Don't try to beat the clock. Okay? Really flesh out and do the best you can. This is a chance to impress. It's not a time to rush past the time. Okay? So these are the two types of tasks you have. One is called an analyze an issue task, and the other is an analyze an argument task. Together, they combine to form the AWA section. For each, you have 30 minutes, which brings it to a total of 60 minutes. These are actually the first 60 minutes of your 4-hour exam. Okay, so really build your stamina, come prepared. For those of you who've enrolled with Galvanize, you would know that all of our mock tests come with the AWA section at the very beginning, just to give you 5 different tests of experience to sit through this 1 4-hour session at the end. Okay, so the first hour of your 60 minutes is going to be spent writing essays. So be prepared, practice. This kind of thing doesn't happen beautifully overnight. All right, so I'm sure a lot of you are wondering by now how the essays are scored. Okay, so each of these 2 essays are scored in 2 different ways. One, it's evaluated by a trained human reader. So there is going to be a real person reading your essays. Okay, so make it as legible as possible. Try to avoid as many, grammatical mistakes, spelling errors. They can't see it. And So they're going to grade each of the essays, give it a score out of 6, 0 to 6. The final score is going to be an average of these two scores. So they don't give anything in decimal points. It's always going to be a whole number. And the final score may have the decimal point of 5 at best. So that's how you're scored. So if your issue received a score of 5 and your argument got a 4, then your AWA score overall would be a 4.5. Note that the scoring is holistic. So what they're looking for when I say holistic is overall quality. The essay as a whole should be quite good for you to receive a reasonably good score, like a 4. It's okay if you've made a few grammatical mistakes. It's okay if your content isn't 100% perfect. But say you do averagely well across all of these, then you can get a pretty decent score. Now, if your grammar is really, really horrible, but you have great content, you still have some chances of scoring. Like I said, content has the highest value. That said, if it's really hard for them to even get through one of your sentences, that's not going to help either. So focus on covering all 4 of those areas, your content, your organization, your grammar, language, a little bit each, so you can improve overall. Okay? They're going to look at all of these aspects, the strength of your argument, the relevance of your examples, your grammar, and finally combine all of that to get your score. It's also important, as if you remember, I mentioned that each essay is evaluated twice. So one is by a human reader, the other is by a software called an E-rater. Now this was developed by ETS, the people who give the GRE exam, and it's actually used to monitor the human reader. So the E-rater also gives an evaluation and a score, and if the two scores agree with one another, then the human score is the final. If they disagree, then a second human score is obtained. So there's a chance that your essay may even be read a 3rd time. And that final score is an average of the 2 human scores. So the E-rater score is never your final score. It's just to test whether the human score sounds appropriate. So they're going through a lot of trouble to assess how good your essay is. So like I said, there is a lot of weightage involved in the AWA that isn't really talked about. So impress, work on your profile, improve your AWA writing skills. The next big question that comes to anybody is, how do I manage my time? So you have, what, 30 minutes to write your 2 essays, that is 30 minutes each. How do you manage that time? How do you break it up into chunks? How do you deal with each part of this task? Well, as always, we recommend you spend the first couple of minutes reading your topic carefully and understanding the prompt. So the reason I say this dedicatedly is because a lot of learners we've seen personally tend to read the prompt very quickly and think, oh gosh, I have to write an essay, and then you just rush and start writing. Please don't do this. Okay, we have seen students make very big mistakes or errors in their judgment because they rush to try to write the actual essay. But it's important to understand the prompt and the argument first. You may even miss a really big keyword and completely misunderstand what the prompt was about. In fact, we've seen students miss keywords which mean the exact opposite of what they've understood. So they said, okay, technology is not the most important, and they may have missed the not, right? So please take your time to read carefully and spend these couple of minutes being really focused here. Don't think, oh, I have to write, I have to write. That is not the point here. Analysis is actually the first thing they're testing you on. Now, the next 2 to 4 minutes is going to be spent on reading the prompt again. Yes, I said again. For those of you who don't like reading again, please get that out of your system. For the entire GRE, the verbal, AWA, everything hinges on you reading carefully and reading maybe even multiple times to make sure you really understood what you're reading. This is where you begin to jot down your points and examples as they come to your mind. So I'm sure that as the moment you lay your eyes on any particular topic, all these ideas come flooding into our mind. Now is the time you take to quickly note them down. When I say quickly, I really mean quickly. Okay, don't spend time writing full sentences at this point in time. Just get the point down. Okay, technology advantages, technology disadvantages. It's okay if you use short forms, whatever comes to your hands as quickly as possible. For those of you who are not comfortable with typing, please get a lot of practice, okay? You have 30 minutes, you have to be comfortable typing. The next 15 minutes is the most important 15 minutes. It's smack in the middle so that you have enough time to really wrap it up. This is when you write a draft. For those of you who are not accustomed to following the proper writing technique, every piece of writing that you do has an all-important drafting stage, which means, yes, it is not final. Okay, the one time you write is not the final piece. So type up your draft, use the points and examples you came up with, jot things down, even put new things that hit you at this time. But you have to do it within these 15 minutes, because next you only have a few more minutes to really develop new points and clean things up. Now this is where the most important part of making an essay a finished product actually happens. Okay, the reason I said the previous 15 minutes was just a draft was because this is when you make it final. This is when you make it a complete piece of writing. You have to spend time rearranging and reorganizing your ideas. Okay, you need to say, hey, is this the place where I want to start talking? Which is the most impactful thing that I can finish on? Which is the best concluding note? And move things around. Make sure that there's logical flow from point A to point B. So does point B contradict point A? Great. There's a space for you to use a transition. So maybe you finished point A on a particular note. Before you start point B, you might want to say, however, it's important for us to consider, so on. This is the kind of thing that gives your essay flow. It makes the reader aware of your flow of thought, of your flow of reasoning. So transitions are a huge part of organizing your essay, and I would really recommend taking a few minutes to get comfortable with them. Please just look up transitions online whenever you get some time, so you can understand how to structure essays. Now the last 3 minutes, the reason this is listed as a separate bullet point is because we really take it seriously as a part of the writing process. You're not allowed to not do these last 3 minutes, okay? You must read your entire essay, check for mistakes and typos, and see if you need to make any quick changes. At this time, you do no writing. At this time, you do no additions, you do no subtractions. Just edit and make sure you clean it up, okay? Now, I've seen a lot of our viewers, listeners today have asked about word limit. So word limit, I'm sure you're all accustomed to it based on your experience with essay writing so far, but it's not the biggest and most important thing of concern here in the AWA section. So you have half an hour to write a substantial essay. I would recommend writing an essay that's anywhere between 3 and 5 paragraphs. And the reason I say this is because you need that much space, at least, to develop your ideas thoughtfully and substantially. Now, 5 is good. An absolute maximum, I would say, would be 7 paragraphs. Please do not exceed 7 paragraphs. That really means you're talking a little bit too much, really testing the reader's ability to keep up with your thinking. Okay? And a paragraph shouldn't just be 1 or 2 lines. I will talk a little bit more about structure shortly. And what about word limit? Now, like I said, it's not be all and end all here, but we're looking for at least, say, 350 words or so for a reasonably substantial essay where you have talked about all of your ideas clearly. Now, this can go up to, say, 400, maybe even 500 words for those of you who are a little wordy or write longer essays. It's okay if you're a little wordy, but try not to go below the 350 point because that's just not enough words for you to really express how much thinking they're looking for. Okay, so for word limit, I hope this is okay. Please try to write at least 300, 400 words or so, 3 to 5 paragraphs. I will come to structure very shortly. Like I've already mentioned, practice is absolutely essential. You cannot ace these AWA exams on your first try. So please practice. Try to type at least 3 to 5 of these essays. So when I say 3 to 5, I mean at least 3 issue types and at least 3 argument types well before your actual GRE. Like I said earlier, those of you signing on with Galvanize Test Prep, for most of our packages, we offer grading so we have five different full-length mock tests, and they come with AWA sections. And for most of our packages, we offer grading for those essays, and at least one set of essays would get a full-length, deep, and insightful feedback on how you can improve. So this is the kind of feedback you may require from an expert to help you improve. So it's really recommended, because while you can improve your language and grammar with the help of some books and some spell check and so on, it's really hard to improve your sense of analysis and your content without getting some feedback. So please try to get some feedback. And of course, when you practice, use a timer. Okay, timing is all essential for organizing clearly. Okay, I'm going to give a very brief example of a topic, and I'm going to use analyze an issue essay task because for a lot of people, this is slightly harder because you have to come up with the entire content all on your own. So for those of you, I'm just going to quickly address a couple of the recent doubts. For those of you who've missed any part of this webinar, please do not worry. We will be uploading it in a few days' time on YouTube. Just let us know if you need it, and we will send you a link at that time. So coming to the analyze an issue task, the issue task, for those of you who don't know, will have one question, which has a very broad issue addressed in that question. And you will have instructions that tell you how you should respond to that issue. And your requirements would be to evaluate the issue, kind of think about how it's complex, look at its different angles, and then you have to develop your argument. But which side are you taking? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree? And you need to provide reasons and examples to support your views on that issue. And that argument that you develop is your essay. Okay? Now the issue task is here to assess whether you can think critically about this topic. This topic, like I said, is going to be a very general topic, and you'll have very specific instructions. So you need to express these in your writing very clearly. So I'm giving you a sample here just to get an idea. You have to evaluate the issue, the thing in bold, and you have to follow the prompt, the instructions in how you write your essay. The issue here is, as people rely more and more on technology to solve problems, the ability of humans to think for themselves will surely deteriorate. So you see how it has a very strong opinion stated. Now this is how the issue task will usually be. It's going to have a very strong opinion stated at some point. So people are relying on technology to solve their problems, and because of that, their ability to think for themselves is definitely going to deteriorate. Now this is a strong issue. Now what you're requested to do is write a response where you discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree. And this is where I'd like to bring in the complexity of the GRE. See how they didn't ask you if you simply disagree or agree. They asked about the extent to which you disagree. You are welcome to agree 30% and disagree 70%. It can even be as nuanced as 50-50. It's completely up to you. Okay? You decide at this stage how much you agree and how much you disagree. Any stance is okay. You can disagree completely. They will not judge you for your position. Please don't worry about that. What's important is how you develop and support your position. This is where examples and such come in handy. You need to do it in a way that makes logical sense for a reader who's never met you, right? So that is the key here in writing this essay. Come up with really good examples. Come up with really good claims that make logical sense and structure them in a beautiful way that makes it clear to a new reader. It's also important that you ask yourself a lot of questions about whether the statement is true, whether there are other considerations that you should take in mind. Okay, so prompts like the one you saw earlier are not the only way it can be phrased. Here's a whole bunch of examples. Write a response where you discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with the statement, explain your reasoning for your position. Similarly, there's going to be a lot. There may be a recommendation. You have to explain your reasoning for your position. There may be a claim. There may be a view, and you have to express which one you agree with and explain your reasoning. You may notice this trend where you're constantly asked to explain your reasoning. So you can understand that that's what they're really looking for. So these are all more examples of the type of prompt that you may get. There are many, many more. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to show you a couple of links where you can get a pool of AWA issue and essay questions, argument questions, in case you want to see some more examples. Okay, coming to how you compose your response. This is a really important part, and I really want you to pay attention. For when it comes to issue and issue type essays, you need to understand the issue first, and then take your position. Make yourself clear. Read the claim, follow the instructions, and really see whether you've understood what's going on, or if you've missed any words, or if you've misunderstood something. If you're not clear, read it again until you're really 100% sure, okay? Then you spend a few minutes really thinking about the claim, about how it relates to your own ideas, about how it relates to your own experiences, to the things you read about, the things you've observed, to the people you've known. The beauty about the Analyze and Issue essay task is that they allow you to write all about whatever your personal experiences are, as long as it's related to the topic. Okay, don't write something that's completely irrelevant, of course, but related to the topic, and make sure you take something that's powerful and effective so that it can convince somebody else logically. Okay, for the Analyze and Argument task, you are not going to bring in any of your own ideas. It's really, really important that you don't do that. But in the Issue task, it's all about your ideas. Okay, so for example, the topic earlier was about technology making us, affecting our ability to think for ourselves. So maybe you agree. Maybe you say, hey, you know what? I can't even remember my mother's phone number anymore. I have to use my phone book. Yeah, I can't even think for myself. Or maybe you disagree. You say, hey, you know what? Technology helps me think on entirely new planes, right? I'm able to use technology, and then I'm tackling whole new problems now. I, for instance, am using technology now to take learning outside of a restricted classroom to a whole bunch of viewers situated all across the globe. So you can think in any sense you want, as long as there's a logic to support what you're thinking. Of course, it's important for an issue essay to decide on your position. You have to take it and you have to really defend it. It's okay if it's a strong position. It's okay if it's nuanced 50-50, but you need to really make sure you have points to defend it. Okay, and when I say points, you want a minimum of 3 points. This is a magical number. I want all of you to take it home with you. Anytime you pick a position, you want a magical number of at least 3 different, distinct points to support that particular position. Okay, so the first thing you do after you have decided your position is to brainstorm for those 3 distinct points. So for example, say I disagree with the claim, and I say technology doesn't make me, make my ability to think deteriorate. I need to come up with 3 different reasons, 3 different, obviously different points for which that's not true. So like 1, I'm thinking a lot about how I can teach audiences with this new technology, and how I can reach out to more people, and how I can improve the efficacy of my teaching using this technology. And that's making me think on new levels. So that is 1 clear, defined point. I will show you a whole bunch of more points for this particular topic shortly, just to give you an idea. You have to also decide at the time of coming up with your 3 magical points, for each point you want to come up with clear evidence, that is reasoning and examples. So see how I said it takes my thinking to new levels. My example was that I'm thinking about how to tackle a much bigger audience with this new technology. This is my example. I'm using my computer, I'm using the internet, I'm doing this. So come up with clear examples right away. And then you begin typing your response. Please refine as you go, but for those of you who spend too much time making it too perfect, you can refine it at the end. The important thing is, though, you spend time refining it. Don't leave your draft as it is in your first writing. Okay, this is all important. Once you're done with your draft, arrange your examples in a powerful sequence. Develop things well. Okay, when I say powerful, make it impactful, make it effective. Take the most compelling example you have and put it at the beginning. Take the next most compelling example you have and put it at the end. So say you're going to talk about World War II, some example from World War II, that's pretty powerful. Everybody's going to know about that. Everybody's going to be able to relate to that. So you want to put that somewhere at the beginning or in the end, preferably in the beginning so it draws the reader in. But in the end is also great because it leaves them with that powerful note, so they really remember and really agree with what you're saying. Write a long essay. For those of you who are too used to writing very short texts, please work on this. When I say long, like I said, around 350 to 400 words is a good number. A little more than that is also more than welcome. When I say 5 paragraphs, I'll show you what I mean and how you should structure these soon. You need to have strong opening and concluding paragraphs. Okay, openings and conclusions really show a reader that you have taken the time to organize your thoughts, that you've taken the time to think about how you're going to present your ideas. And that is what they're looking for in this section. Might I remind you, this is all about your logical thinking and your clear presentation. So please do not omit opening and concluding paragraphs. ask yourself these questions so that it gives you ideas. Now, asking questions is the best possible way for you to come up with new things to write about. Start asking questions. What is the issue? The issue here is that technology may or may not be deteriorating people's ability to think. What are the instructions asking me to do? The instructions are asking me to take a position, right? And what is my position? My position is that I agree a little bit, but I mostly disagree. Do I agree with all of the claim or just one part of it? Why? Why not? I agree with this part. Why do I not agree? So don't leave anything without asking the question why. Why do you agree? Why do you disagree? What are your personal opinions? Does the claim make assumptions? Are they reasonable? So there may be an underlying assumption. For instance, in this claim, there is an assumption that for those of you who thought, hey, I'm using my phone book and because of that, I'm not really thinking anymore. Well, phone book, well, you're using that in place of your memory. Is memory your only real ability to think? Is memory is that the only function of the brain? So that's an assumption you may be making about the claim. So sometimes a claim may have assumptions, sometimes you may have assumptions. So it's important that you really analyze what you're thinking and think about whether that's the only possible perspective. I promise you there are hundreds of perspectives, so try to think of them. Is the claim valid only under certain conditions? If so, what are they? Could it be that this technology deteriorating the ability to think only applies in some ways in some places? Maybe if people get so lazy that they don't want to do any of their work on their own, including thinking, maybe under those conditions it is bad. But what if there are scientists out there using technology to break through to completely new discoveries? That's a condition in which it really doesn't apply. How do I explain how I interpret some terms or concepts using in the claim? So what do I mean by technology? What do I think technology includes? Am I also talking about like the transistor radio, or am I thinking only computers and smartphones? And how are they different? How have I understood it? How does it relate to me? These are all things that you should ask yourself before you assume or take a stance. Now, if I take a position, how do I support that position? What are my examples? You can use real and hypothetical examples. It's perfectly okay. Hypothetical means it's not really true, but there is a case where it could be true, and you're discussing that. It's perfectly all right. Why that example? Real examples tend to be a little stronger than hypothetical ones, but what if questions are also quite effective. So what if we suddenly woke up the next morning and had no technology? Okay, so you see how effective that is. Examples are most compelling. Like I said, these are the ones you save for the beginning and for the end, so think about that. Now, we already saw this task earlier. This is the prompt, and these are your instructions. This is the issue itself. I wanted to show you guys a list of relevant points and examples for this particular task so you have an idea of how you can analyze it. What are the levels at which you can think and analyze this topic? One, for any given topic, you can acknowledge it. There's always some aspect of truth in what they're saying. So yeah, it is true that technological advancements are making us not really use our memory as we once used to, for example. But does technology really deteriorate our ability to think? Is memory our only real ability? It's forced us, in fact, by taking away all of this, making us think less about just remembering stuff. We're using our brains to do, higher levels of thinking. So instead of just counting the numbers, we're thinking of how we can manage the numbers, like managing accounts. Instead of spending too much time doing 2 + 2 to the power of so-and-so, we're thinking, what does it mean now that there's a 2 + 2 + so-and-so, right? It helps us focus on the important stuff. So now that they've given you a word processor and a timer, you don't have to set, a timer or an alarm. You don't have to write it with your hand, and you don't have to worry about, making a mistake and cutting it out because you can just erase it. You can focus on writing a good essay. And technology is, of course, pervasive. So it's everywhere, and it's enabled us in many, many fields to make a really great impact in teaching, in medicine, and everything. So you should also think about how technology has helped us take all of these to the next level. Yeah, sure, technologies can give us some problems, but these can also lead us to new breakthroughs. So say you have a problem of plagiarism now that content is available for everybody all over the place, and people are copying just off of Wikipedia. But now we also have plagiarism detection tools that can tell us when something has been copied. Say 50 years ago, somebody copied from somebody else, it would have been really hard to know. But today, you've got to be really careful. So finally, technology is just a tool, right? It's in our hands. It's our responsibility to be careful and scrupulous about how we wield it. So this can be like a bottom line, something that you end your essay on this note, right? And finally, an essay, for example, all of the points I've pointed out basically disagree with the prompt. You're welcome to agree with it. There's no one way of going about this essay. You can agree a little bit, disagree some of it. It's perfectly okay. But this is an example of some points that disagree with the prompt. So once you've got all these points down, you just think about how you want to organize them, all right? Where do I start? A good place to start is acknowledging the topic. And next place you want to pick is something that's of substance that makes a really strong point and really flows into your basic area. The last thing you want to end on is probably a note that really sums it up. I felt that this technology as a tool is a really good way of summing it up, right? That's really bringing all of our points together. Something that goes well before that, maybe this one. So when you've come up with all your points, when you've jotted them down, take a few moments to number them in a way that you think is appropriate for you to build your essay. And once you've numbered them, once you've got all your ideas in one place, you have to structure your response. This is the most important part to organizing your ideas. So when I say structure your response, think of it like a mental table of contents. Okay, so every really good essay follows a kind of like a pyramid structure. You have this really big main idea. And for that main idea, remember the magical number 3? You have 3 really good supporting ideas that give it its backup, that basically helps substantiate that idea or claim. So I say, no, technology is useful. Technology is making us think harder and deeper and is not deteriorating our ability to think. And I have 3 different points to substantiate it. That's what you should have come up with here, right? 1, it makes me focus on the more important stuff. 2, it causes new breakthroughs. 3, it's helping fields all over the place. So these are my 3 different core points. And within those points, I want to come up with relevant examples. So each of these should have at least, say, 1 to 2 examples. Please don't skimp on examples. If you can afford to have 2 examples, that would be great. Have at least 1. Without even 1 example, you do not have a substantial essay. So each of your core points should have 1 or 2 examples. Once you have determined what your examples are going to be, you're ready. You're ready to compose your essay. Where do I start, though? This structure really doesn't tell me where to start. I'll tell you, the place where you start is your introduction. Please always have an introductory paragraph to your essay. Now, each of these in this numbered list that I'm going to write on this side of this slide is going to be a paragraph. In your introduction, what you want to start with is acknowledge the prompt, acknowledge the issue at hand, and summarize it. Now, the reason I'm asking you to do this is because a lot of you may have read and understood the prompt really well, but there's no way for a reader to know if you really understood what's really been told. The moment you summarize it, you're telling them, hey, I understood what is going on here. And it gives them a very clear idea that the first part of your analysis is clear. Your reading was a good one. So acknowledge and summarize the topic given. Once you've summarized, you want to next state your position. Like I said, it's perfectly okay if you agree 20% and disagree 80%, or if you agree 50%, disagree 50%, or you're all the way one way, all the way the other way. Anything is okay, but state your position clearly. Okay? It's important that you do this ahead of time. And it's also important that whatever position you maintain, that you bring up over here, is maintained throughout your essay. Don't state a position here that you're going to argue with much later on. If you're 50-50, you have to make that clear right away. You can say, I agree with some parts, but I'm inclined to disagree with other parts. So it's very important that you're clear there. So once you have decided on your position and you've stated it clearly, it's also a good idea to sum up your magical points here. So summarize them. Say really quickly, you know what, I disagree with it for this reason and I agree with it for these reasons. For those of you who are going for 50-50, it may be good to have a fourth point. So you have 2 of them agree and 2 of them disagree. You would want to divide up your points based on how you agree or disagree. Now, the reason I'm asking you to summarize 1, 2, and 3 right away is because that really tells the reader that you've thought about your organization and structure. That tells them that you've planned this essay so far in advance that you know exactly what you're going to write in the next step. So your next paragraph is going to be about your point 1, right? And follow it up with your examples. You know, you can come back and add a little bit more text later on, but you want to have at least, in an entire paragraph, you want to have at least, say, 3 to 5 sentences. Okay, don't skimp. Your introduction can be a little shorter than that. Maybe 3 sentences would suffice. You need at least that much to do all of this. Okay, so take about 3 to 5 sentences, make your key point, give your examples, substantiate your claim. In your next paragraph, make your next key point, give your examples, and substantiate. In your next paragraph, give your final, claim, give your examples to substantiate. In your last paragraph, you conclude. A conclusion, it doesn't need to be very long or elaborate. 2 or 3 sentences is enough, but it really brings everything together. You can really just say, don't start by saying in conclusion or to summarize. You know, you want to end it with a punch. You know, give it something really worth the substance of what you've said. So conclude with a punch and say, it can be understood that, technology really helps us support new levels and areas of thinking. That's the kind of conclusion you want. Don't have something repetitive. Don't have something that starts with in conclusion, please. That shows that you don't have a lot of experience writing essays. The last important thing is, once you've got all this down, go back and add transitions. Okay, your transition can be as simple as firstly, secondly, thirdly, but I would recommend against that because that doesn't show complex thinking. Instead, I would recommend using more complex phrases like in contrast, however, although. So please look up transitions and flow well from one paragraph to the next. Okay, don't just start your paragraphs abruptly. Use your transitions, structure your essay, organize your thoughts. Okay, so this is how you want to structure your response. You want to plan all of this ahead of time in your brainstorm phrase. All of this happens during your draft. Sorry, not able to type that clearly. Okay, this is your drafting stage. Before you draft, you want to have your points clear and lucid in your mind. That way you don't get stuck staring at the blank screen and the cursor and not knowing what to write. Okay, this is what it means to plan and organize your essay. For those of you who want a bunch of more examples of issue and argument tasks, please check out these 2 links. They are the ETS official websites for these prompts. So there's a pool of issue prompts here and a pool of argument prompts over here. You can copy this link or take a screenshot. You can always find this online as well. Any topic that you get on your essay is on your exam is most likely from one of these 2 pools. So go ahead, take a look at a few. But the key here is not being familiar with the topic, but just knowing how to handle it. Once you know how to handle it, you're going to do okay. If you want a closer example of how to handle issue or argument essays, we've already done a couple of webinars on these, and you can check them out on our YouTube channel, Galvanize Test Prep.